And today we will be learning the data type list. So list is a data type offered by Python, and it's an important one because we will be using it frequently. The list is basically a collection of items. You can store multiple values in a list, and list is mutable. That means you can change values of items in a list. You can make changes. You can update a particular value, or you can delete that value, or you can insert at a particular position. All of these operations can be performed on a list. First, let's go ahead with declaring a list. You declare a list by using a valid identifier and then square brackets, and the items in a list are separated by comma delimiter. Then printing a list can be done in a few ways. The first way is just printing out the list by using the list name. Then if you want to print a particular part of the list, you can use colon. So 1:3 would mean you start at index 1, that is 4, and you go all the way to index 2. So 3 is not included. So you stop right before 3. And if there is nothing mentioned before colon, it basically means you include all the elements before 2, right? And if there is nothing mentioned after the colon, it means you go to the end of the list. So here you start at 2 and you go to the end of the list, and that's how these are printed. Now, lists do not just store the same data type. They can store multiple data types. It can store float values, string values, and also integers, characters. You can do anything. In fact, you can also store a list in a list. So here you can see mega is a list of lists. It consists 2 list items, A and diverse. So when I print mega, this is how it looks. Now let's understand this statement. So basically, this statement means that you go to the list that is present at index 1, which is this one, and you print out the elements starting at index 1 of the list and going all the way to the end of the list. That's why 243, 3.14 will get printed. Now let's have a look at some of the built-in functions that are used in a list. The built-in functions are something that is already defined or written by the developer. All you have to do is just use the function by using its name. And one thing you have to be careful with is spelling of the function. You have to use the exact spelling. You have to pass the exact number of arguments. Any change in the number of arguments will result in an error. So insert function takes in 2 arguments. The first argument is the index, the second argument value, and the order has to be maintained. Otherwise, the output will not be as you wish. Another thing to notice is that the way the function is being called. You first use the name of the list, and then the dot operator, and then the function name. So here A is basically the list object. So the concept of objects is brought later in this. But as of now, remember that the list name will be used along with the dot operator to call the function. So another way, so when you insert using the insert function, value 72 gets inserted right at position 2 and the rest of the elements will get shifted. Now if I use A of 3 equal to 45, what happens is this 45 is replaced. 8 is replaced with 45. So 45 is replacing. Another function that you can use is append. this takes in just one argument, just takes the value. So you can't use the index. It will by default get inserted at the end of the list and you cannot change that. Another function is extend. Basically combines two lists. So here I have a dot extend b. A gets added to A and this is the final list that you will be getting. Then you have these operators that you can use. So instead of using extend, I can just use a plus symbol and that will combine the two lists. Now, if I want the list to repeat a certain number of times, I can use asterisk or multiply. So if I'm using 3, then the list gets multiplied 3 times. If I'm using 4, then 4 times. And you can notice that only plus and asterisk have been used. You cannot use some other operator like minus or modulus because that will not work. Then another function is remove. So this just removes the element. You need to pass the value to the function and that value gets removed from the list. So here you can see 72 was in the list initially. After using remove function, it gets removed from the list and this is what the list looks like. Then there is a pop function. So basically, if you have studied stats, then you know that pop is the last element from a list. So even here, it removes the last element. But if you want, you can specify the index. So if I specify 1, then the element at position 1 will get removed. So here, 243 will get removed and this is what will be printed. Then there is a function clear, which will basically empty the entire list. You don't have to pop element by element. It is clear and the whole list becomes empty. I can also use copy function. So the elements of A get copied to B. This is how you can use. Then some other function like len can be used. This will basically print out the number of elements in the list. Max will give the maximum element with the minimum element from the list. And when you have a list of string, it goes by the alphabetical. Then loops can also be used in list. So if I have this list, this I basically means the element that you will be storing in the list, and for and this part means you will go from I equal to 0 to I equal to 9 because when I is 10, it is not present in the range. So it goes from 0 to 9. Now here, instead of storing I in the list, I can store 2 into I in the list. So here you can see, so 2 times I value is being stored in the list. Now there are other functionalities. These are not built-in functions, but you can just check if a particular element is present in the list. So if 2 in the list, then print yes. That means if the element is present in the list, you are printing yes. And list has one more concept of negative indexing, which means instead of traversing from the beginning of the list, you can go from the end. So by using -1, I am accessing the last element of the list, that is 9. If I use -2, then the second last. Okay, this is how you can use negative indexing. Some other that you need to know are key points that duplicates are allowed in a list, and you don't need to have a particular ordering. Yeah, so that's it for the topic. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more videos.